Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing another recap for Witch Hat Atelier episode 6. The one for episode 5 did pretty well, so I think I'll just keep doing these. I think they were fun to do, quite frankly, and I enjoyed doing it a lot. So we're just going to keep it rolling for the rest of the season and see how that goes. This one will probably be a little bit shorter just because this episode was slower paced, and I don't have too many manga spoilery things to get into this one, so it should be a bit shorter video this time around. But without further ado, let's get into the recap and talk about the episode a little bit more. Okay, so I have my notes here just to make sure that I'm keeping track of everything and that I actually get to everything that I want to talk about, because if I don't have them, I will get lost for these sorts of things. But the episode actually opens with what I believe is an anime original scene. This scene was not like in the manga, which of the chapter this is being adapted this episode essentially. And basically in the scene, Coco and Aga are both studying in their room. They're like practicing drawing spells on opposite sides of the room. Obviously, they're not studying together at this point. And Coco's making a lot of noises. She's sighing, she's groaning, she's like, and like Aga doesn't really like that because she is the type of person who needs absolute silence and no distractions when she's studying, when she's doing things. So she just gets up and leaves. She's like, all right, this is too much. I gotta go. And Coco's kind of like, oh damn, was I making too much noise? And it's like, yeah, you kind of were, just a little bit, but honestly, this is an improvement. This is because listen, I got from a couple episodes earlier would not have been okay with this. She would have been very angry about this. But I think she at this point she's kind of starting to get that that's how Coco is, and doesn't really have the bandwidth to be mean to her at this point. It's like, okay, I'll just leave, I guess. But she finishes drawing the spell outside and creates like this light column that's like still a bit wavery. So she's not satisfied with it because our girl's a perfectionist, and there's a reason for that, which is probably not going to be reached in. Actually, I don't know if that'll get reached in this season. Probably not, and honestly, it'll be further down the line. But there is a reason she's like that. But she's talking about how imperfect her spell is. She doesn't really like it. However, there is like this bird that flies by, and the bird kind of interacts with light column. It's like, oh, light, pretty. And this moment kind of like it really is one of those moments that really shows you that Aga is a kid despite acting the way she does, because like the bird flies by and she's kind of like just looking at the bird, kind of like just being captivated by it, just enjoying its presence. Really, you can kind of tell, even though she's not like smiling like ear to ear or anything. She's like, oh wow, like like the spell and the bird are interacting together. And then she gotta like see storm clouds coming, so she's kind of like, okay, I gotta like go because it's gonna rain. And at that point, it goes back to the thing. Like Coco is studying in a different location in front of a window, and she is struggling. She's like, I'm gonna draw my spell. I'm gonna practice. I gotta learn how to draw. And there's a lot of things happening here. Which one, she doesn't actually have the pen that she would have liked because all the stuff happened in Calm when Igwin showed up, teleported them, and all that stuff with the dragon happened. So she doesn't have a pen with the right weight that she would have liked when drawing. So that's still an issue. And then also the fact that Coco is actually the opposite of Agat, in the sense that Agat likes to be free of distractions, no noise, no nothing when she's drawing and practicing, but Coco really prefers to do something that like stimulates her brain. Otherwise, she will just kind of like zonk out and fall asleep. Which is something that I really like about the series, just in general, is that there's a lot of different learning styles that are showcased between the different characters. So like again, I got like no distractions, nothing like any sort of noise is gonna throw her off, kind of. When she's trying to practice things. And Coco, if there's no sort of like practical engagement with what she's doing, she's not it's not the best setting for her. Like she's a very much like hands-on practical learner. And Kifri, who notices her about to basically fall asleep, notices this and is like, okay, well, we're gonna go to the kitchen real quick. And he brings her to the kitchen and basically takes down a pot, gives Coco a spoonful out of the pot, and she's like, wow, this is really good. And Kiefer's like, yeah, that's from 2 years ago. And this is one of the things I've also really liked about this anime, is seeing them animate Coco's reactions, because she's very expressive. So like when she realizes the stew's from 2 years ago, she's like she's not okay with it. But essentially the lid of the pot makes sure that the stew is rewound to the time when it was freshly made. You just have to draw the seal on the roof of the lid, essentially, to make sure that it doesn't go away and that the stew doesn't spoil effectively. Which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that is something that is relevant to not the current arc, but the one that just like finished in the manga. Which this is another thing. Shirahama has layers. Like there are things that'll happen in like later chapters, and you'll think about like, wait, that was like related to something very minor in an earlier chapter, but like it's really interesting, like seeing it now, having read the chapter again now that the episode's out, and I mean, like actually that's something that tied in much later, for a completely different reason, which is really cool. Actually, it's really cool how she thinks about these things and like leaves these little crumbs along the way in the story. But to go on from that, essentially, like Kiefer then kind of enlists Coco to help him make. They're not potatoes. I forget what they're called exactly, what the exact like fruit or like plant is called, but essentially like if you were to make a baked potato, right? Like he wants her to help him like bake these things so he can crack them open and eat them. And she needs to draw the fireball to do that, so she kind of like draws the fireball in all these different configurations. Sometimes the flame's not big enough, sometimes it's too focused, sometimes the levitation seal isn't strong enough, so the thing just falls through the fire. But all in all, it's a very practical learning experience for her because she gets to draw it over and over and over again to learn how to like actually like how the different parts of the spell work together and how to actually like make this food essentially, which is really cool. You know, it shows that Kiefer really has an idea of what works best for his students when it comes to them learning. You know, Rish and Tetia eventually show up as well. So I mean, they're like, "Oh, can we help?" But like Kiefer's like, "Okay, you can like kind of help, but like we want Coco to draw the spells this time." So you know, Coco's drawing the spells and whatnot, and you know, Rish and Tetia are like dicing things up, helping in that way. And then eventually, like the food's made, and like, oh, let's go outside for a picnic. And Coco goes to get Aga, and she's like, yo, do you want to go outside? And Aga's like, no, just stay here and I'll eat in the room. But also, it's gonna rain. So it starts raining. It's like pouring. And the girls are like, oh man, like we can't have our picnic. But Kiefer steps out into the rain, and we get like the really cool like spell that he has that kind of like reflects the rain around him essentially, and just makes it like he's dry, everyone in the radius of the spell is dry, which is really nice. So you know, the girls are able to go have their picnic. They like go under a bridge because it is still raining, so like they're doing that and all that jazz. And then we get this really kind of like cool, not cool, I guess cute montage of everyone kind of like eating the fruits of their labor essentially, and like having a good time. Even Brush Buddy stuffing his little cheeks with like different like bread and stuff like that, and it's like, wow, this is very very cozy, very wholesome, you know. And then the rain parts for a little bit, and there's a rainbow, and they're like, oh wow, it's so pretty. And Coco being the empathetic and nice person that she is, sees this and is like, you know, I'm gonna go back to the atelier and get Aga because like she needs this, like, you know, she needs a break, she needs to see this, like I want to share this with her essentially. So she's going back, right, and she gets to the door, and all of a sudden the door opens when she knocks. It's Orugio, one of my favorite characters. I would put him up there with Coco and Aga for being my favorite character. But he opens the door essentially and is like, who is this child that's knocking on our door right now? Because when he left and was not in the atelier, there were 3 girls. Now there's a 4th girl knocking at the door for some reason. And so Kiefer is like close to being behind Coco and comes up, sees this happening. It's like, oh, like, yeah, I did take this girl in. Actually, like, this is. And he explains the situation essentially, and Oruja's like, oh, like, okay, well, actually, in that case, I'm gonna take her to the Knights of Morales. And he grabs Coco and starts walking her away from the atelier, which, by the way, the window way is in the basement of the atelier. I don't know if he was just being dramatic, because I don't know, like, were you gonna walk all the way to where the nearest Knights of Morales were? Like, I mean, I don't. You could just take a window way, buddy. Like, I don't know. He must have been doing it for dramatic effect. I don't know. But either way, Kiefer obviously doesn't like that, so Kiefer stops him like the water wall spell essentially. And so then they decide like, okay, fine, we're just gonna go inside and like hash this out, because he's like, I'm not letting anyone take Coco, so you're gonna have to accept this. And so they talk more inside. We get some really nice like world building about Pointed Hat Society. So Kiefer explains that Orugio is the watchful eye for the atelier, which watchful eyes are essentially people who oversee the ateliers and like report any sort of any misconduct, I guess, to the central like Pointed Hat authority, basically, because you know they're like, the more remote an atelier is, the less like connection they have with, you know, more central parts of society. So it would be easier for things to go haywire there, so they need watchful eyes to make sure things are running correctly. And we explain the Knights of Morales, who are essentially witches who very much like follow the rules of the pact, enforce the rules of the pact. If, and it's basically said that if they were to catch Coco essentially and find out, like, you know, about her whole deal, they would just erase her memory, including her love of magic. And Kiefer, having seen Coco's love of magic, is like, yeah, and they'd probably also have to erase my memory also. And that's the thing that gets Arusio to be like, oh, I guess we're gonna keep the girl. I guess we're gonna have one more girl in the atelier, I guess. Which it's interesting that that got him to react because at first, like, no real reaction for saying that, oh, they'll erase Coco's memory, including her love of magic. When Kiefer's like, yeah, then they'll erase my memory too. Like they're gonna have to erase mine because like I know this girl loves magic so much. He's like, okay, fine, you can keep her. And he just goes off to his room because this is a lot. Like he just came back home and now there's an extra child here, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, just Kiefer doing his thing. Because I mean, you know, first it was Agathe, then he scooped up Rishon Tetzi at some point, and now there's a fourth one. So again, lots of it's like that's got to be stressful, right? So no blame there. I understand, I get it. But essentially, after all that, the girls kind of like watch it from coming in from the rain because it did rain on them a little bit on the way back. And so after that, Coco's looking for Brush Buddy because she's like, where is he going? Like, where is he? And she sees Brush Buddy, but Brush Buddy then runs into Arugio's room and she's like, oh no. And she goes up to the door, and on the door, it's like, if you knock, you're going to be cursed. Coco, obviously being an outsider, is very scared by that. She's like, oh no, like, what am I going to do? And what does she do? She goes into the room anyway because that's what she does. And you know, she goes in there, tries to look for him, but essentially one thing leads to another, and she finds out that Arugio is holding Brush Buddy basically by the scruff of his neck. I don't know the skeletal structure of a Brush Buddy actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's the equivalent of what would be the scruff of his neck, I guess. So holding that there, and gives Brush Buddy back to Coco, but Coco's like, wow, he's really dry, right? And essentially Arugio then takes out one of his spells. It's like on two paired rings and like connects them together, and it dries Coco and Brush Buddy off with this really nice kind of like light effect, which is really cool. It's really warm. The thing is, Arugio, first half of this episode, is acting like he's very tough, very hard exterior, but I think his magic definitely shows that he's a very kind individual. This guy's kindness and most radiant star, right? But and it's just very warm. It's very nice, and he drives her off, and it's like, okay, yeah, you can leave. Coco steps on the ground, and it's like, wait, this like the ground lights up. She's like, oh, this is like the spell that made me fall in love with magic. And Rugio's like, oh yeah, this is actually like my spell, like a spell that I made. And he explains how it works to her, that essentially like it's on two different stone pieces basically, and if you step on it, it completes the seal. The ground lights up. And there's a really funny sequence of Coco laying on the ground, essentially like being like, oh my god, it's the magic I love so much. And we basically have this whole moment where Coco gets to finally thank the person that made her fall in love with magic. And this is the thing that really finally makes Arugio kind of like soften up, even though he's a softie. Like he's not Mr. Serious. He is a very caring individual, even if he tries to act like it. Because here's the thing, the way he was acting at the beginning of this episode, he does not act like that ever again. Like I mean yeah, I don't really recall. Yeah, he doesn't. He really doesn't. But yeah, thanks him for that, and he's like, okay, just get out of here. And she leaves, and he's closing his door, but he actually leaves it cracked, which is another thing. It's like, okay, you didn't close the door all the way. Like he's like, oh, okay, I guess she's here to stay now, and he actually like kind of like he's grown attached. It's really funny. Like he's grown attached to this girl in like the 30 minutes he's known her, which is really funny. But yeah, that's kind of like how that kind of ends for them, this part. But then you have the whole time this is happening, Aga's been working on her spell in the room, essentially drawing it over and over again, and she like draws it, this last time, and it's more, the light beam is more stable, so she's kind of like, oh, I can like finally get to take the next test, like if I keep like progressing this way, like I'll be able to do that soon. Because she's really hung up on the test for reasons that that are again explained later on or seen later on. So she's very driven to do that. But she's also been distracted by the loud just banging of the wind on the window, and eventually loud banging at the door because someone's banging on the door. Kiefer opens the door, and we see Dagda for the first time. So very excited to see him, and he's explaining that some stuff happened at the river. Essentially, one of the carriages got washed away. Nobody could help. We need a witch to help. A witch lives here, so like, can you like come and help us? Kiefer's like, okay, fine, like I'll go help and like whatnot. And Aga's like, okay, like bring me with you because I'm gonna be useful. And that's kind of like where that episode ends essentially. But there was like a mention of Custis, like not by name, but he was mentioned, and I was like, oh yeah, like my boy's coming here. So I'm very excited about that as well. And yeah, next episode is gonna be like kind of a doozy. Like there's a lot of stuff is gonna happen in like in next episode. Like that's a lot of things are gonna happen. Um, but I am excited to see that one. So and excited to recap it as well because I yeah can't wait for that. Especially because the Knights of Morelos that was shown kind of like earlier when they were explaining who the Knights of Morelos were. It looks like Easties, and I love to hate on Easties. He's a really well written character. I love him as a character. However, I do really like to hate on him because he's just he's a lot sometimes. But that you're gonna see that if you're an anime only. You're gonna see exactly who this man is. But yeah, I thought it was really good, really solid episode, really solid pacing. I honestly have no idea if we're gonna like. I was looking at the key visual right for the show essentially, and I was like, you can see I believe it's called the Serpentback Cave on in like one of like the picture frames essentially that's in the key visual, and I'm like, at the speed we're going, I don't know if we're gonna get. We're definitely not adapting the full arc, that's for sure. So that does make me wonder if they already have like season two mostly done or in the chamber, and they're just kind of like waiting for season one to end, and then they're gonna announce it, and we're gonna get it soon. Which I hope that's the case. I mean, it was like recently revealed that it took them 3.5 years to get this season done, so I don't know. Maybe they already have those episodes or something. Maybe they don't. Either way, I could wait 3.5 years more for a season two because I am loving this adaptation so far. And honestly, I would rather take years at a time and to get stuff like this than for them to just pump things out every year. If they don't have them ready. But yeah, very solid episode. Very excited to see the anime only reaction to Easties in the coming episodes. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a really solid episode. Okay, so that brings this week's recap to a close. Again, great pacing, great story elements, great world building, great character interactions. Slower episode, but still really solid. And yeah, it's been really good to like read the manga again alongside some of these earlier episodes because a lot of these chapters I read whew, 4-ish years ago. So I'm like yeah, I'm refreshing my memory. So it's nice to experience the series again, both in anime format and in a manga format, especially to do these recaps. It's nice to like have the extra context. But yeah, that's this recap, and I will see you guys in the next one. And thanks for watching.